Tantor Audio, a division of recorded books, presents Earnest by Kristin Von Kreisler, narrated by Romy Nordlinger. Prologue. Seattle's second chance shelter smelled of damp fur and dog breath. Frantic barks and whines pierced the air and assaulted Anna's ears. She shrank back from the desperation that hung in the air like mist. All the sad eyes begging for a home, the furry foreheads rumpled with anxiety. Anna's tender heart slid to her feet. "We shouldn't have come here," she shouted to her boyfriend Jeff. "You wanted to check out the dogs," he said. Anna was clutching the second chance flyer she'd found that morning on Jeff's windshield. Coming here had seemed the best way to goad themselves into action after weeks of talk about adopting a dog. But now, engulfed by the dog's distress, Anna wasn't so sure. "We could have looked for a dog on Pet Finder," she said. "In their rented condo, they could have studied photos on the computer screen." "You can tell a lot more if you see a dog in person," Jeff said. "Yes, but I want to take all these dogs home." "We can only afford to care for one." "Why do you have to be so practical?" Anna smiled, revealing lovely teeth. She was the pretty flower child, the impulsive one. If she had her way, by evening their condo would be an orphanage for these homeless dogs. Somehow she and Jeff would manage their upkeep. But he was innately cautious and responsible. He'd adopt only if he could provide the best vet care and premium kibble. Not that being reliable was bad. Actually, Anna liked that quality in Jeff. After living with him the last 2 years, she'd concluded it would make him a good father. And that was partly why she'd suggested getting a dog. Jeff wanted a buddy, but Anna secretly wanted a trial run at parenting. Maybe a dog would nudge Jeff closer to marriage, which they'd discussed, but always as something in their vague and rosy future. Now they were both almost 35, and it was time. In enclosures lined up along the aisle, most of the dogs were making their case for adoption. Some ran to their gate and pleaded their cause with eager yips. Others stood back, polite, and demonstrated good behavior. Or they looked adorable, as did 2 matching chihuahuas whose whimpers urged, clear as crystal, "Take us home with you. See how lovable we are." "I'd be afraid of stepping on them." Jeff steered Anna to the next run, which housed a Great Dane mutt the size of an adolescent moose. On massive hind legs, he leapt up and pressed his huge paws on the gate. Jeff shook his head. "Not a condo dog." He and Anna looked at a dog of unknown lineage with a bald tail and fur the color of a napkin that had wiped one too many mouths. When she curled her lip, she informed them of her resentment at being confined. "What if no one adopts her?" Anna asked. "Don't worry, it's a no-kill shelter." Jeff reached for Anna's hand and pulled her to the last gate. "Look at him." A Labrador retriever bounded toward them, wagging his tail so hard that he wagged his whole back end. He weighed about 80 pounds, and his personal infinitive might have been to go lumph, but he didn't seem to be the type of dog who'd stomp through flower beds or knock over lamps with his tail. He looked up at Anna and Jeff with big brown eyes, which politely asked, "Please, will you take me home and love me?" He pressed his side against the gate to get as close as he could to them, and his body begged, "Pet me, oh please." "What you doing, boy?" When Jeff reached through the gate's bars, the dog nuzzled his hand. He'd cornered the market on wholesome. He could have been a Cub Scout mascot or co-starred in movies with a freckle-faced kid. Anna's eyes brightened. "He's a love bug." "He's a purebred lab. The real deal. Why would someone give him up?" A laminated sign on the dog's gate explained that he'd been tied to the shelter's doorknob with a note under his collar. He was a healthy 3-year-old, and his name was Moonbeam, of all the preposterous things. His slightly wavy fur looked like it intended to curl, but never got around to it, and it was the color of wheat in candlelight, though his ears had a touch of biscuit beige. His nose looked like a licorice gumdrop. His muzzle was softly rounded, and his ears were upside-down isosceles triangles. When Moonbeam blinked, any woman in her right mind would have envied his thick, dark lashes. His confident eyes were what grabbed Anna. Anyone could see that behind them lived a wise old soul. At the same time, though, his eyes were tinged with sadness, probably because he'd just lost his home and family. Anna wanted to bake him gourmet peanut butter cookies, buy him squeaky toys, and mother him. "Let's adopt him," she said. "He wouldn't be too big for our condo?" It was only 900 square feet, and their barbecue grill and potted tomato plants crowded the small deck. A large dog could cross the backyard in 10 steps. It's not like he'd be locked up at home all the time. He could come to work with me every day. Anna imagined him napping under her flower shop's counter, surrounded by buckets of mums. "What if he scares your customers?" Jeff asked. How could they not love him? Through the bars, Jeff held out his hand to Moonbeam. "Can you shake?" A wheat-colored paw plopped onto Jeff's palm. "Sit." With impeccable cooperation, Moonbeam sank down on his haunches and gazed up at Jeff with adoring eyes that said as plainly as anyone ever said anything, "I will be exemplary. I want to be your dog." "He's trying to do the right thing. He's so earnest," Jeff said. Ernest would be a good name, far better than Moonbeam. Jeff squatted down eye to eye with Ernest. "Maybe we should think about him for a day or two before we decide." "Someone else would adopt him," Anna said. Jeff stroked Ernest's soft ears. "You're too good to pass up, aren't you?" "Absolutely," agreed Ernest's tail wags. Anna walked Ernest outside while Jeff filled out the adoption form. Owner, Jeff Egan. Occupation, architect. Address, 1735B Wood Avenue, Gamble Island, Washington. If you rent, name of landlord, David Gray. Who will be responsible for vet bills? I will. Jeff checked yes, that Ernest would have a fenced yard and sleep inside at night. Finally. Jeff paid the fee with his credit card and hurried to find Anna and Ernest. In the back seat of Jeff's Honda, Ernest stared out the window at Seattle's skyline. He gazed at the Space Needle and seemed to note with interest Safeco and CenturyLink fields. Looking angelic, he did not smudge the window with his nose, and he did not paw or drool on the upholstery. On the half-hour ferry to his new home, he curled into a trusting ball and slept as if the Honda had been his bed forever. Anna and Jeff joked that his glomming onto them might be a sign he was part barnacle, and they discussed people's tendency to adopt dogs that looked like themselves. Jeff pointed out that Ernest's fur wasn't so different from Anna's ash-blonde hair, which was cut between a shag and a pixie. She said that behind Jeff's horn-rimmed glasses, his expressive brown eyes were like Ernest's, and Jeff's short hair, though dark and slightly thin on top, had Ernest's hint of waves. Anna pictured Ernest sprawled on their deck among the tomato plants, a paw over his eyes to shade them from the sun, or leaping into gold maple leaves piled along the sidewalk in the fall and crunching them with his paws. She and Jeff would take him on hikes in the whole rainforest and teach him to fetch a frisbee. They'd bathe him in their tub and invite him to sleep on their bed. "We'll be a pack of 3, Anna said. A family. Chapter 1. Anna Sullivan pulled up in front of her beloved Victorian house. Well, it wasn't really hers. She rented it with 2 other business owners, and they were saving up to buy it. But in her heart, she owned it. As on every Monday morning, her ancient van was loaded with wholesale flowers and plants from Seattle, and Anna would have to lug them into Planned Parenthood, her shop on the first floor. Ernest leapt to the street, happy that he'd had a ferry ride, as Anna lifted 2 buckets of roses. "Good morning, dear house," she whispered, as she and Ernest started down the sidewalk. "Good morning, dear Anna," she imagined the house whisper back. In Anna's mind, the house winked for good measure and added, "Enjoy this beautiful autumn day." A crow flew across the house's half-acre front lawn and landed on the white porch railing. In a historic town of old clapboard buildings, the house stood on the main street like a dignified dowager. Built by Gamble's first attorney, she had 2 stories and lots of gingerbread. Her 4th owner had been Anna's grandmother, with whom Anna had lived as a child until Grammy died and the house was sold. When Anna talked with the house, she always responded as Anna imagined Grammy might have. In Anna's mind, Grammy and the house were one and the same. Grammy's spirit lingered in the turret, red brick chimney, old wavy glass bay windows, and flower boxes of lobelia and geraniums. She was in the sky blue paint and the white curlicue brackets adjoining posts along the front porch. Her humor showed in the lion's puzzled face embossed on the front doorknob and in the doorbell, which was the round black tongue of a small brass bear. Grammy's love of football remained in the porch's beadboard ceiling hook, from which she'd hung a giant Huskies banner on University of Washington game days. Though willowy, Anna was strong, but even so, carrying buckets of sloshing water into the house took effort. She set them down to give her hands a break before hoisting the roses up the porch steps. As her loyal protector, Ernest plopped down by her red ballet flats while she flexed her fingers and smoothed down the little tufts that sometimes appeared in her hair, whether she liked them or not. As she picked up the buckets again, she heard from across Rainier Avenue, "Hey, Anna, wait up!" Waving to her were Lauren, who owned the beauty salon and used bookstore on the house's 2nd floor, and Joy, whose gift shop was on the 1st floor at the back. Though old friends, the 2 women were opposites. 6'2" brunette and ruler thin, Lauren was like a shy giraffe, but put a pair of styling scissors in her hand, and she became a confident lion. Joy was 5 feet tall, bleached blonde, plump and feisty. When business was slow, she worked on Wild Savage Love, a bodice-ripper novel featuring her ex-husband as the villain. Joy stopped to look at pastries in the Sweet Time Bakery's window, but Lauren dodged a cab speeding to the ferry and jaywalked across the street. At the end of the sidewalk, she slipped copies of her September poem into a plexiglass box attached to a metal pole, which she called her community poetry post. As she reached Anna, Ernest got up and gave her a proper sniff. "I wish I could help you unload, but I've got a full foil in 10 minutes, Lauren said. "No problem. I'll manage," Anna said. "I'm desperate for coffee. Want a cup?" "Sure." Overhearing them, Joy followed, her face flushed, a giant canvas tote bag in her arms. "Be careful with our Mr. Coffee. He's started rebelling. You have to smack him on the lid to get him to turn on his light." "I guess we need a new one." Lauren knitted her eyebrows. "I'll check out New to You this afternoon," Anna offered. "I don't want to use some stranger's nasty old used Mr. Coffee," Joy said. "We have to save every penny for the house," Anna said. "If Anna can't find a nice one, I'll go to Macy's. Deal?" Lauren asked Joy. "Okay," Joy said. But Anna was reluctant. The sooner they saved money, the sooner the house might be theirs. At their monthly finance meetings, they combed their bank accounts like misers and plotted how to approach their landlady, Mrs. Blackmore, whom they called Mrs. Scroogemore. She should be glad for them to take the house off her hands, since she couldn't bother with repairs. In the kitchen, the lights flickered, and you had to be an expert at wielding a plumber's friend to coax the sink to drain. But once Mrs. Scroogemore learned of the women's interest in the house, she'd milk them for every cent they had. "I've got to rush. See you at lunch." Lauren ran up the porch steps on her size 11 feet, her feather boa stringing behind her long vintage skirt. She disappeared into the house. "Let me help you," Joy offered. "Thanks, but you're carrying enough." Anna grabbed the handles of her buckets and hauled them through the front door. Joy turned left and went to her gift shop. Anna turned right, past the oak newel post, and walked down the hall. As Ernest followed, the stained glass windows cast red and gold rectangles on his fur. Anna wiped her feet on her straw welcome mat and opened Planned Parenthood's door. And the fresh smell of flowers and plants hit her like a gentle breeze. In one breath, her morning changed from fall to spring. When Ernest stepped inside, he changed too, from a dog to the guardian of Anna's magic kingdom. She liked to think that gnomes, wood nymphs, sprites, and trolls would be at home in her shop. With love and care, she'd transformed what had been Grammy's adjoining dining room and parlor into a fantasy forest of plants and flowers. You could imagine a unicorn disappearing into the greenery, or Tinkerbell flying through the air and landing on a rosebud. In the center of the rooms were old tables and chests that Anna had rescued from the new-to-you shop, and she and Jeff had painted Chinese red, Prussian blue, and emerald green. On the wood surfaces, she'd set Buddhas, folk art angels, carved animals, and brightly glazed pots of orchids and African violets. Around the bay windows were her larger plants, Ficus benjaminus, Schefflerus, philodendrons, tree ferns, and palms. Edgar, her rubber plant, who was not for sale, stood like a sentinel in the corner next to Constance, her favorite feathery fern, who resided on her own oak pedestal. Anna had filled the windowsills with colored glass vases of flowers, jars of Ernest's dog biscuits, and pots of small carnivorous plants, such as bladderworts and Venus flytraps, which Tommy, a neighborhood kid, stopped by to check for captured insects. Anna set the roses in her refrigerator, and she and Ernest went back for more flowers and plants. 8 trips later, the lilies, freesia, and carnations were cooling with the roses, and the hardier mums and sunflowers were in buckets on the floor. With orange-handled scissors, Anna snipped the rubber bands around each bunch of blossoms and spread them out to give them breathing room. His escort duty over, Ernest settled down to nap on his round green pillow, which looked like a giant lily pad. Soon he was on his back, snoring, with his paws in the air. If someone set a slab of wood on them, he could have been a bridge table. At her workspace behind the counter, Anna started on voicemail orders that customers had left yesterday. Monday morning was her busiest time. She placed hydrangeas and irises in a vase for Mr. Holloway because they were his wife's favorites, and she was having surgery. To boost Mrs. Holloway's spirit, Anna added 4 free irises, though Jeff, who'd said her shop was not a charity, might disapprove. As she was tying purple ribbon around the vase, Ernest got up and paced the room. "What's the matter, sweetie?" Anna asked, as a man came in wearing sunglasses, tasseled loafers, and a polo shirt with a tiny alligator on his well-toned pec. "I meant Sweetie as my dog, not you," she said, smiling. The man didn't look at her. He shuffled to her counter, his gaze downcast, and fingered his house and Porsche keys like worry beads. As Ernest came over and checked him out, the man said, Finally he managed, "I want something special for my wife. She just got on our neighborhood watch committee." "So, your neighborhood watch committee. Not exactly the pinnacle of every woman's dreams." Anna read the signals. she dealt with so many guilty husbands that she'd designed the Virtue Special, a bouquet for them to give their wives to mend their marital fence. "How about some beautiful lilies? Women love them," she said.
Sure. That sounds okay."
"Here, I'll show you." As Ernest returned to pacing, Anna went to the refrigerator and pulled out her bucket of lilies, which radiated innocence. "I like to mix these with baby's breath." She pointed out the clouds of equally innocent tiny white flowers in their bucket on the floor. "If you'd like to wait, I can have the arrangement ready in a few minutes."
"Good."
He walked to the window and looked out at the sunny day.
"Do you smell smoke?"
Anna sniffed. "It's Mr. Webster down the block. He refuses to pay for garbage pickup, so he's always burning trash. We've gotten used to it." She counted out a dozen lilies, snipped their stems, and worked puffs of baby's breath out of a clump. Thank goodness Jeff would never need a Virtue Special. He'd never betray me, she thought. "Do you want a gold or silver ribbon?" she asked the man. When he didn't answer, she looked up. He must have sneaked off to call his girlfriend. Anna was filling a glass vase with water when Ernest walked out of the shop and crossed the hall to the kitchen door. He sniffed the crack below it, as if someone were sautéing sirloin on the stove. "That's odd. Ernest sticks to me like lint." "It's too soon for lunch, sweet boy," Anna called. He could be a promiscuous glutton. Ignoring her, he sat in front of the door and stared at the knob. His gaze seemed to will it to turn and let him inside. "Ernest, you had a big breakfast. Come back." Anna put a lily into the vase. Ernest didn't budge.
"Maybe he needs an obedience class."
The man walked back into the shop. No, Ernest was thinking something, and he seemed to be getting worked up. He whimpered and insisted in no uncertain terms. "I want in the kitchen." "Just a minute, Ernest. Let me finish this first." He whined again, louder and more forcefully. "This is important. I want in the kitchen now." Ernest scratched the door, his first ever destructive act, and so out of character that Anna became alarmed. She set a lily on the counter and told the man, "I'll be back in a second." As she hurried into the hall, she demanded, "So what's the matter, Ernest?" His barks were almost loud enough to shake the window panes. "Hurry, hurry, now!" He clawed deep, sweeping scratches into the door. When Anna opened it, black smoke billowed in her face. She coughed like she'd never breathe again. Her eyes watered so she could hardly see, but she made out flames crackling across the kitchen. The red-checked cafe curtains were burning. So was the cabinet that held the fire extinguisher. As Anna blinked against the smoke, she screamed, "Joy! Lauren! Fire! Fire! Everybody get out of the house!" She slammed the kitchen door and herded Ernest to her shop. The man was gone. She grabbed her purse and slammed her own door. As she groped down the hall, all she could see was smoke. Ernest took her wrist in his mouth and led her slow and steady toward the porch. Choking, she shielded her face with her hand. Her eyes stung and tears streamed down her cheeks. Again she called to Lauren and Joy. What happened to the guilty husband? Anna was the first to reach the front door. When Ernest got her to the porch, she gulped fresh air and coughed. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone and punched 911. "Good boy, Ernest," she managed. She leaned down to thank him for getting her out, but he was gone. She turned around. Ernest was running back toward the front door. Anna lunged to grab him, but he wriggled away and disappeared into the house, surely to find Lauren and Joy. "Oh no, Ernest! Ernest, come back!" "Nisqually County 911, what emergency are you reporting?" asked the dispatcher. Ernest vanished in undulating waves of thick black smoke. Chapter 2. Jeff looked around the meeting room of Gamble's City Hall. The room shouted institution. It could have been a prison cafeteria. The walls were pea soup green, the linoleum speckled gray, the ceilings acoustical tiles sickly off-white. Sunlight worked its way around the edges of the closed Venetian blinds that covered the only window. Worse than the cheerless surroundings was the palpable tension left over from earlier meetings. It seemed to hang around like a bad-tempered ghost. You could almost serve up the tension on a platter, Jeff thought. He didn't like stress, but who in this world could escape it? Though he considered himself as strong and tough as most men, he also wasn't wild about unpredictable situations that were crucial to his career. This morning's meeting with the Gamble City planner assigned to Jeff's new project, Cedar Place, could lead to success, but it could also end in failure and spin his work out of control. Though no one has much control over anything, no matter who you were, control was an illusion. Especially when dealing with Gamble's staff, who were notorious for being erratic. The planner assigned to Jeff's project could be a bastard or an angel, and he'd never know which till the meeting started and he faced a gauntlet or a marshmallow. And the planner had all the power over whether or not Jeff got his permits. That was the hardest part for him to take. He'd worked hard on the architectural drawings, tried to anticipate objections to the project, and put his creative ducks in a row. Though he was as prepared as possible, anything could come out of left field and derail his effort. Today was uncertain. Jeff brushed Ernest's fur off his gray dockers. He'd run the sticky roller over them this morning, but Ernest had an endless supply. Small price to pay for the world's greatest dog, Jeff thought, as he opened his briefcase next to the stacks of paper he'd set down on the table. As required for a building proposal, he'd brought 7 copies of all drawings and supporting documents, including the demolition and building permit applications and the plans for the site, landscape, construction, engineering, and storm drainage. He pulled sets of elevation drawings out of cardboard tubes and wrestled with the paper's curling edges, which were the bane of an architect's existence. Jeff glanced at his elevation drawing of the building's front. Cedar Place was meant for commercial use. He'd had a hell of a time dissuading his client from the hard-edged box she'd wanted to rent to Shell Inc. for a chain drugstore, which Gamble's citizens would have hated. Now, instead of the box, Cedar Place would have 2 stories with alcoves, decks, and dormers. The roof would have interesting angles, and classic cedar shingles would cover the exterior walls. There would be as many skylights and multi-paned windows as the city's code allowed. Though the building would be new, its Pacific Northwest architectural style would blend in with historic structures around it. Jeff had put his heart and soul into the design, and he hoped the building would become a destination spot. Its 9 spaces would go to small restaurants and shops that would draw in tourists for a needed boost to Gamble's economy. Then there was the large space that Jeff and his client had invited the island's Kids Discovery Museum to move into at a highly discounted rent. And as of now, the board was ecstatic about it. Jeff's design would improve many lives, including his. He smiled to himself. For months, he'd wanted to marry Anna and start a family. The raise he expected to get from carrying out the project would make him financially stable enough to propose. As Jeff straightened his papers into orderly piles, 2 fire engines and a medic unit rumbled down the street with sirens blaring. Surely old Mr. Webster was beating back flames at his fire pit in his baggy pants and undershirt again. Last spring, he'd burned 6 months of Gamble criers at once, and ashes had fluttered over his head like bats and brought the neighbors running, for the umpteenth time. The sirens added to Jeff's tension. He mopped his neck with a Valentine's Day handkerchief Anna had embroidered with hearts and their initials. As he took off his glasses and cleaned the lenses, anxiety nibbled his stomach. Here we go. Bristling with self-importance, the man Jeff assumed was the planner.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?